Hi there, it's Al from Bear Dog FX. Today I'm going to show you how easy it is to illustrate a simple drumming pattern using the very versatile and powerful Strummer effect included in FretBoard. We are going to use common text characters to represent the kick, snare, and hi-hat of the drum set. If you're a teacher, a student watching a Strummer animation will be able to quickly learn the rhythm and play the drum beat. If you're a music producer, you can use Strummer to enhance your music track with animated symbols and emojis that really pop and land right in the groove. Editing with Strummer in Final Cut Pro is easy. To illustrate complex drum patterns, just stack Strummer effects on the timeline. Aligning a Strummer effect to the tempo of an audio track is as simple as click, drag, and pull. Let's get started. The first thing you'll want to do is drag the Strummer 16x effect to the Final Cut Pro timeline. You'll find it in the Generators tab under FretBoard. We'll place the Strummer effect directly above the audio containing the drum beat we are going to illustrate and line it up with the start of the clip. In the strumming plugin, you have 4 rows of arrows and 16 time slots. These arrows would normally be used to illustrate the up and down strokes in a guitar strumming pattern. We're going to delete all the arrows and change the font to American Typewriter for each row. Make sure the Strummer effect is highlighted on the Final Cut Pro timeline, then click in row 1 of the Strummer effect in the viewer window. In the Type Inspector, select the arrows and press Delete. Now click on the font selector and press A on your keyboard. Choose American Typewriter. Repeat this process to change the font and delete the arrows for the remaining rows. Finally, in the FretBoard Strummer menu, reduce the glow blur to 0. Now that we have a clean slate, let's add a basic title effect to show what drum cymbals we are going to use. For this popular drum beat, we have a kick that lands on the first beat and a double kick that lands on the third beat. Let's use row 4 of the Strummer effect and a capital letter O to represent the kick drum. We're going to use capitals for all the text. Double-click in row 4 to type the capital letter O for the first beat. Now use the spacebar to advance the text cursor to the third beat in row 4. Type 2 O's for the double kick. Now use the spacebar again to bring the cursor to the end of the row so it contains exactly 16 characters of text, including spaces, or 1 character per time slot. The snare drum hits occur on beats 2 and 4. We'll use row 3 and a capital X to represent the snare drum. Use the spacebar to enter spaces until the cursor is where you want it to place a beat, and then use the spacebar to bring the cursor to the end of the row so it contains exactly 16 characters. The hi-hat plays on every beat. We'll use row 1 and the hyphen to illustrate the hi-hat. We won't be using row 2 for this illustration. We'll need to type the hyphen character 16 times, making sure the text cursor ends at the end of the row, so the row contains exactly 16 characters of text. Let's change the row 1 color for the hi-hat to white. Now click on the Strummer effect on the timeline and hit the spacebar to play the animation. Looks good. Last step is to compile the rows into one line by using the Pattern Mode selector and choosing Assemble and then Hide Template. Let's move the counter below the drumming pattern. That's it. We have just illustrated a simple drum beat in a language anyone can understand. If you want to increase or decrease the tempo, just adjust the length of the Strummer effect. To change the tempo of the audio clip, use the Retime feature in Final Cut Pro. If you don't have a drum track to reference when you're building your drum pattern, using a click track can be helpful. You can download a folder of click tracks at beardogfx.com. I'll leave a link in the description below. Starting with a 2-bar count-in is an effective way to get your students in the groove. Let's make one using the counter and Strummer. Move the playhead to the beginning of the timeline. Double-click on the Strummer 8x effect to insert it at the playhead position. In the Tool menu, select a position tool or press P on the keyboard. Lift the Strummer 8x effect out of the storyline. Click on the left edge of the background clip and extend it so it lines up with the beginning of the Strummer effect. Press A on the keyboard to return to the Select tool. Click on the Strummer 8x effect on the timeline to highlight it. Click on the counter in the viewer and select all the text and replace it with the standard 2-bar count-in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. Now click on the font menu in the Type Inspector and type B to bring up the fonts that start with the letter B and choose Barriacito. Now let's increase the size of the font so the 8 digits line up with the 8 columns. Drag the counter into the center of the frame. Now is a good time to hide the template and strummer so only the counter is visible. Now select the 1 and the 2 that represent the start of the bars, and then in the text inspector under Face, change the color to red. In the counter section of the strummer menu, change the animate selector from word to character. A counter doesn't do you any good without a click track, so let's add one. Once installed, you can access the folder of click tracks from the Final Cut Pro Sound Effects menu. Let's drag the Strummer 8X click track directly below the counter we just created. Press play. Looks good, but the counter needs to pop a bit more. Let's add a bit of animated blur to the background. Click on the titles icon and type pull in the search field. Drag the pull focus title effect to the timeline and place it between the counter and the clip below. Click on the title and subtitles field in the viewer and delete the text. This adds a nice blur with a 1 second fade in and fade out to help separate the counter from the background. We can also increase the pop factor for our drum pattern by increasing the boost scale for the animated characters. Check Assemble Guide and adjust the horizon line if you want to line up the original text with the scale text on the X and Y axis. We can also add glow blur to the animated text for a bit of extra sheen. We have just scratched the surface of how versatile the Strummer plugin that comes with FretBoard is. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.